So there's been an impending negotiations between SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, and the studios, along with the WGA strike that's happening right now that shut down a lot of television work. The date was coming up, and right on the eve of it going to a strike, they extended their negotiations. They're now punching it out a couple more weeks till after the 4th of July holidays, and everybody can come back together. The word has been so far that they have been productive, maybe not fully getting to where they want to be, of course, yet. But it's still in that weird place where this could be really bad. This could get really ugly really quickly. I know for you and I, we've talked about living through the last WGA struggle in 2007, I believe, 2006, 2007 time. But we kind of made it through it. Like, there was still television. There were still things being made. There was still late night. That was the big thing I remember a lot of, is like the late night hosts having to do their own content. I don't have any memory of SAG ever going through something like this. This feels like a bigger thing because it's bad to say it. They've maneuvered their way around writers. They can't maneuver their way around actors. There's just no way.
No, and I think this will. I have no idea. I'm in no way knowledgeable enough to like guess if this is actually going to happen or not. If it does, like, yeah, you're right. It would be massive. I mean, the article that you sent me, I think, did a good job of like showing just how much it would affect like every different area of the visual arts. I don't know how else to phrase that, of just kind of like TV, movies, everything.
Yeah, so Deadline has a great article that they came out with a few days ago called "What Happens to Hollywood and Beyond." Not a Toy Story reference. If the actors go on strike, and so they kind of lay out, hey, they're not on strike yet, but what could we be seeing in the future? What's going to happen with all these multiple areas? Already, we're like starting with TV. It's already a lot of the TV is kind of on hold, not happening. The fall TV schedule is a giant question mark of if anything's going to be on there. What I thought was interesting that they called out is game show and competition shows, which at least the ones that we watched, there's some sort of a star actor involved with some of that. I know back in the day, it was like the Joe Rogans of the world doing Fear Factor, and your favorite person doing Survivor, if you want to do a shout out for him.
Yes, Jeff Probst.
Yep. So, but honestly, like, we watch a lot of like Lego Masters, and that's got Joe. That's got Job in it. It's got I always say Joe, but that's not his real name. I always call him the Arrested Development. Will Arnett. So like, you got him in there. Like, he wouldn't be on set for those kinds of things. And I think a lot of the people that are involved, like the Probsts of the world, he probably maybe wouldn't cross the picket line, even though I don't know if he's necessarily a SAG in this. I don't know if he has a SAG card or not, whatever. So obviously,
my understanding is like, you can't get on TV like that unless you are.
Like, you have to get one to be on. Yes, you're right. So now we go to feature films. There's right now it doesn't look like no movies have left 2023 yet. Like, they haven't been pushed out of 2023 to 2024 or beyond. There's been Marvel has done a lot of chicanery on release dates that we've already talked about, moving those kind of around down. But so far, no movies have been ousted from this year, like moved like we had during the pandemic, where a bunch of them left. That's still kind of a question mark. Are any of them going to? There's several movies that race to finish production and pickups by July. Beetlejuice, a lot of these movies I didn't know were happening. Beetlejuice 2, Bad Boys 4. The next of the Ghostbuster reboots is like the reboot part sequel to the reboot kind of a thing.
I only knew that was happening because Casey Neistat stumbled onto the set in one of his recent vlogs.
That's right. That's
the only reason I know that's going on.
Yeah. So far, they aren't done. But if there's a SAG issue and they can't come to agreement, it's going to shut down all of feature films. They will be on complete halt right now. And a number of them are already because of the WGA strike, and a number of Marvel films included in that. Yep. So this was funny. They talked about award shows. Like, this is a big deal that the award shows might not happen because Hollywood loves to celebrate themselves. So the Emmys, that's a big one. September 18th is the actual Emmy award show. But they're saying, hey, they start talking about it and figuring and planning it all out now. This is the time when they're talking about it in July. So sometime this month, they got to make the call. Are we going to have this? Are we not? It kind of looks like it's going to happen around the time of when they're going to come to an agreement or not, like the extension on the time frame. So I thought that was interesting. The Emmys might not happen, which didn't we like not have the Emmys for a while? Or no, Golden Globes. Was it Golden Globes? They just like would announce the names for a couple years because they couldn't find a host or something.
No, the Golden Globes were boycotted by so many people because of issues within the foreign press.
Yep.
And so NBC just said, okay, we refuse to even air it.
So we're gonna get that kind of an award show.
We're gonna get a lot of weird stuff.
Yep. We talked about Comic-Con before. Warner Brothers and Paramount are the only ones kind of potentially going to be going to it. But
looking at this again, I do wonder, like, is the extending of the contract at all? Okay, they're trying to figure something out. You know, are they going to? Is that a good sign or not? But it'll be interesting. I think it'll be... if you remember back to the last strike, what they would do is like wrestle up, like you said, like these weird reality shows where they don't need but this is the hard thing, is you need shows that don't need writers and shows that don't need actors. So what are you left with? You're left with like Dog the Bounty Hunter. You know, you're left with the people in Florida hunting boa constrictors. Have you seen that show?
You're saying docuseries. That's what you're talking about. That's what's gonna.
Yeah, I guess it is like docuseries. I think like that's what you're left with, and we're gonna see like, you know, Dog the Bounty Hunter New Orleans and Dog the Bounty Hunter Chicago, and all that fun stuff.
So the only winner from most all of this is potentially going to be like Netflix. Like, they're going to be able to continue to pull in, hey, we were already going to release this later on. We're going to pull that content up. Oh, how about some international flair stuff? How about some other things? They can still bring over content from other countries. UK isn't as affected in this. Maybe their actors and actresses kind of in solidarity don't do that kind of stuff there. But I think, and even in this article, they talk about the Wall Street's reaction potentially to this, and they're looking at it's going to help Netflix. And what the way they put it in the article is linear TV gets hurt and the streamers benefit, and Netflix is the biggest streamer. They're the ones that can weather this storm, and they're the ones that can come out good. There are other studios that are in a good place, like Fox has sports and news. Disney obviously still has the parks, still has ESPN. So some of these other studios are still going to be able to be okay, and they're not hurting. But you might see some of the other studios that this is all they got. Maybe they're the ones to help bridge the gap and try to make something happen. But we've talked about this before. Studios have been losing money in making movies of late. The artists that are part of the making process and are the faces on the posters, they're not getting paid as much as they used to. Writers aren't getting paid as much as they used to. This thing is all feeling like it's crumbling. And at the same time, I still don't see a place where we don't have streaming channels. I don't know that doesn't happen. I just don't know how anybody wins in this scenario.
Something, isn't adding up.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's being paid too much here. Right.
Could it be executives?
Right. Like your numbers have got to, if your numbers aren't adding up, okay, like, and what's odd is you look at some of these numbers from the box office, and it's not like they're bad results. It's in many ways, they're just kind of like leveling out from these, the addiction to the massive blockbusters. I mean, you hear 30, 40, 60 million dollars, like that used to be average for just kind of, your normal movies. And that was like, okay. Like I remember, what was the like found footage horror movies that like Paranormal Activity? Was that the name of it?
Paranormal Activity. Yep.
It was like a budget. It was like a budget of like $2 million or whatever to make it. And it was like a huge when it made like $50 million or whatever. Yep. And like, boom, they just made tons of them because I mean, that's huge margin.
But that's the problem. They're the budgets for these films, these franchises are not $5 million. It's not
massive.
It's 200, like we talked about. It's like 200 million for Elemental, and it's bringing in 29 million at the box office. That's where I know we other places have decried the death of the middle movie, of like movies that are like $20 million movies that make 50. Like maybe this will usher in back to that world where they will start, hey, let's start doing like 10. If all the movies are going to make 50, 60 million, let's make $10 million movies. Let's make 15, 20, get some of those ones like that we kind of grew up on, that were kind of the fun, kind of quirky movies.
Well, that's what we've reviewed here. This is what we've spent the past 4 years doing, or however long we've been doing this. Is you go back to, that was a Michael Eisner. He used a baseball analogy to say, like, we can't always have home runs. Let's produce some singles and some doubles, couple triples, like let's think through this. And then I think the Iger era has been home run, like we have to have a home run every single time.
Franchise sequels.
And you can't do that. You just can't. Yes, a lot of your movies stink, but if you're only losing just a couple of million on it, it's not that bad. But what's happened is this addiction to getting a home run on these massive movies every time. You're losing hundreds of millions of dollars when they don't work. To me, it just makes more sense to go back to the strategy of, the movies we grew up on, like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, all those movies, you just had like nice, simple stories.
Different times, Eddie. It's different times. Maybe we'll go back. Maybe we won't.
I think you're right. Streaming's not going anywhere. This is going to, it'll have to sift itself out. There's too much money to be made. There's somebody's going to crack the code and figure it out. It'll probably just take some time and some uncomfortableness for a while. And eventually, I hope that it does just balance itself out where we get a little bit of everything at the movies.
That's what we want, guys. We just want to have a great time.
We want a little bit of everything.